There are a whole host of reasons why some of the best players in the game can carry, and today's video is going to showcase how you too can also use the tactics that the top players use to be able to perform way better. And we're going to see that with a replay in the T125, and this is an unbelievably good replay. So for anyone that plays heavy tanks, anyone that plays mediums, anyone that wants to learn the game, even if it is just to counter players like this, then hopefully this video is going to showcase how you can do that and learn a few things here and there as well. So let's get right into it. The T125. Of course, we've done a video not that long ago on the T125 itself, but today's video is not necessarily focused purely on the vehicle, but it is definitely going to showcase what this thing can do. But ultimately, the T125 is all about using the gun handling whilst also being fairly aggressive, because this tank is, to be honest with you, more of an aggressive tank than some of the other heavies, purely because of the gun statistics. You can get really up close and personal with a lot of people. Armour wise, it's not necessarily the best of all of the tier 10 heavies, as you can probably expect if you've ever come across it, and that's because of not only the cupola, which people can pen, but the hull armour is not particularly amazing. It's your typical American hull armour, whereby you get penned in the lower glacis right here on the left and on the right, and if anyone gets around the side of you, yeah, there's no way you're bouncing any rounds really. So what can you do in these matches where maybe you've got yourself in a position that you've got to deal with opponents in front of you? Because there's so many times in situations where you go, right, I've got 3 people sat in front of me, what do I do? And a lot of people will kind of do nothing, and I know that that's obviously very much a case of maybe you just don't understand the best ways to approach the situation, and actually it often leads to a lot of players kind of getting taken out preemptively than before they're able to really do anything, is essentially what I'm trying to say. So the key thing is just to do something, and that's what 95% of people probably don't do. Like, I'm not even gonna lie, a lot of people just are kind of end up paralysed, I guess, by the situation that they're in, and that is something that you should definitely try and move away from, because anything is better than nothing, and actually you'll learn a hell of a lot more by trying something than you will by not doing anything at all. And that means that it's going to put you in a way better stead for when you move on in terms of your games and learning from your experience. So that's number one. The top tier players, I can guarantee you, have done things completely wrong. They've gone out into the open, they've ended up in a situation that's terrible, but they've actually learnt from it. A lot of people will not learn from their mistakes, and you're seeing here this AE phase 1 that we saw earlier had kind of got himself into a very bad position. He'd crossed knowing full well that the opponent team had moved right across the bridge, and that they could quite easily get a shot onto him. So this was something that obviously he didn't think about, and the top tier players, if they got into that scenario, will be thinking that every single time they kind of move forward within their games. And I'm sure you as a player may have already learned this mistake, not to go out into the middle of an open field where people can shoot you, because pretty much common sense. But if you don't learn from it, then yeah, it's not going to be ever so common, and it typically isn't on World of Tanks. But I digress. What do we have in this game? Well, it's a scenario where he now realises that the enemy team have pushed the valley area behind him. But there's also the case of all of these tanks that are right in front. So what do you need to do? Well, if he helps out the team from behind against the AE phase 1, who for some reason has gone back into the middle of the open, obviously probably pushed by the projectile here, but now it's time to then turn around. It can be a possibility where he could have got shot in the back, so finishing off the AE phase 1 was a good idea. Now it's time to focus the people who are pushing aggressively, and that comes in the form of the T125, there's an Object 907, there's also the Leopard 1, and it's time now to start dealing with opponents as and when they come. So it's all about target priorities, picking the right target at the right time to avoid taking any unnecessary shells of damage that could come back and bite you. So we're seeing here T123 is definitely a tank you don't want to be face hugging, just purely because of the armor. It can be a real pain. And also there's the Leopard, who you need to remove because he is definitely a threat. Now that was a low roll. If he'd rolled literally on bang on average, he would have taken him out in that one shell. But it takes 2, but nonetheless he's out of the game. Now the great thing about having a tank like the T125 over some of the other heavies is that it's reliable. It can reliably punish your opponents and it can come up against mediums and still perform. Maybe that can't be said for something like an E100, which would take a lot longer, but in these sorts of scenarios, all it is about is making sure that you don't overcommit yourself. If he's coming out completely side on against 3 tanks, it's never going to go well, is it? But by poking, just so that he can see one at a time, or at least putting one of the opponents in front of the other opponent, meaning that they can't get the shell, then that is perfect. And unfortunately for the enemy team, they're kind of throwing themselves away. And you've seen that with the just complete amount of players that have just YOLO'd across thinking that they're going to be able to take out his team. Now that is just not going to happen within this game. And because of the good marksmanship, and it has been great marksmanship, going into the lower plate of the 257, into the angled upper plate of the 257, and also all of the opponents previously, then yeah, it's definitely coming off quite well. And you can see here, just waiting for that final shell, and he shuts down the 257 and picking up over 10,000 damage. Now, I know you've probably watched this and you thought, wait, he's on 10,000 damage? How has he managed to do 10k damage in this game? It doesn't even seem like he's been really tryharding that much, or at least going after the damage all too much. It's just been kind of coming along as he goes, and that is the case with a lot of the top tier games. It is a case where they do the very basic things right, but they do them every single time. They completely and utterly do all of the basics perfect every time, and that's the difference between some of the best players and some of the kind of, I don't know, average players, I should say. So that's really where the difference comes in. It's not this grand thing where suddenly you become like an absolute god and you can flick onto people's cupolas, because we all use RNG. There is always RNG in World of Tanks, unfortunately, as I'm sure many of you will think is unfortunate. But the one consistent thing is you, and making sure that you put yourself in a position that is going to be, on average, better for your team or better for you. So this is the sort of stuff that top tier players do, and you've seen that consistently throughout this game, and why it's been a utter stomp for his team over some of the others. There was nothing outstanding in terms of what happened during that game. It was corner fighting, it was choosing the right target at the right time, and let's actually have a look at the final stats of this game before we move on into another video. So it was an amazing game by Fiverr from Cracked Clan, and it was of course the third mark game as well, so an outstanding result with 12,423 damage, 1,710 base experience, 7 enemies taken out, and an absolute wrap for the enemy team. They just could not do anything, and it's because nothing went wrong in that game. There was no immediate YOLOs into the opponent's team. There was just calm and collected gameplay, and this is something that you too can do within your own gameplay to improve. And hopefully by watching some of these high tier players go about their normal games, you'll be able to see how you too can actually impact your own game and improve. And that is what this channel is about. So if you did enjoy this video and you want to check out some others, then be sure to have a look at the playlist on screen right now, which covers a ton of gameplay. There's loads of videos at this point on the channel, and if you enjoy those as well, then maybe think about subscribing if you aren't already, because it will help me out as well as keep you informed of when these videos come out. So thank you very much. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day and a fantastic rest of your week, and I'll see you hopefully in the next video. Goodbye.